All right, welcome back, everybody. It is the RP Show across Nevada on the Silver State Sports Entertainment Network and across Canada on Game Plus TV in 33 states. Bob Wilkie from Calgary, Alberta. There he is. Hang on, Bob. I'm going to read not all of your resume because we only got 2 hours. But he played junior with the Calgary Wranglers, Swift Current Broncos, drafted by Detroit, round 2 of the 1987 draft, played with the Wings, Adirondack, Fort Wayne, Hershey, with the Philly Flyers, 93, 94. And then you're like Hank Snow, man. I've been everywhere. Hershey, Indianapolis, Cincinnati, Las Vegas, Fresno, Pensacola, Fresno, Anchorage, York. And he joins us today from Calgary. How you doing, Bob?
Yeah, things are great, Rod. It's always funny to hear the resume. I had a reporter one time said it was like a Johnny Cash song. So I wanted to
Yeah.
see the world, and I was able to do that.
Yeah, and survived it, just like the Swift Current crash from 1986. 4 of your teammates weren't as lucky, and you're part of the documentary Sideways, which came out here this winter. And we've actually got viewers that have written in from Swift Current with some very encouraging messages. You kind of before we get to that, because it's going to get deep. Let's just have another hockey chat for a sec. With men's hockey about to drop the puck over in Italy, what's your excitement level on 1 to 10? As a guy that's played in both countries and has ties to Canada, U.S.
Yeah, probably a 3. It's
Okay.
just not what it used to. It's not what it used to be, Rod. Like it was. I think the hockey landscape has changed so much. It's become, like you were talking about earlier, so political. Yeah, it's just kind of soured me to it. I don't put a lot of effort into making sure that I'm watching these games like I used to.
Yeah, well, some of that comes with age, and then there's things that we do with life outside hockey that you and I both understand. It ain't the end of the world, but I do appreciate those that think that it is. Like the snub talk that was going on when you played, man, with the World Junior teams and then the Olympic. That's people just can't get enough of that. And I'm at a point now where I'm like, can we just stop picking apart the rosters and play? We'll see how our teams do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's the best part about it, right? Let's just play the game. Let's stop talking about all these different scenarios, what could, what should. Let's just play and see what happens. I think they analyze it to death. I think there's so many people out there talking about things that they really have no idea talking about. And I mean, that's why we play the game.
Man, are you speaking my language? I mean, to be honest, you and I, the last time we talked, which was an awesome phone call, by the way. I appreciated that. I appreciated the fact that you knew that when you called me, I would know your story because I watched you play in Swift Current and followed through the whole thing. But I never really knew what went on afterwards, and we're going to get into that. But I've had pro athletes now say to me, I could never play today with what you just said. Everybody talking like they know something, which they don't. It's hard, eh? It's hard on these athletes now, and probably coaches too.
Do a lot of work with young athletes, Rod, and they really struggle just with the social media. Everything's out there all the time, and they don't get any respite from it. It's constant, and we see that their anxiety levels have significantly increased in the young athletes of today because of all the social pressure.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'm gonna because you know enough about this show now. It's very interactive. I'm going to ask you one hockey question from the audience, and then we'll get into your story, and hopefully it helps some people today. But John in Edmonton writes in, and he says, should the Oilers get a new head coach? Bob, I spent a lot of time in Calgary, and the hockey talk I love, but you can't get away from it in Alberta. It's great, but it's horrible. So how would you answer John in Edmonton's question about that and Chris Knobloch?
Yeah, it's such a tough position, right? It really is a thankless position, taking a head coaching job, knowing that you're going to be fired one day. It's not a great feeling, and I think just the over analyzing makes it that much more difficult for these guys to try and do their job. The athletes are different today; they have way more say than they've ever had. I think that the Oilers have historically shown that there's issues within their culture and their leadership, and it seems like they've got things going the right way. Reaching the finals for the last 2 years, and I don't necessarily think that it's his issue. I think that there's more internal where the players have to look at themselves.
Well, I think that would be a very tough place to coach hockey. I think it would be a very tough place to play hockey. I don't think there's any doubt. And I will say this because I haven't talked to you since our phone call that day. I appreciate you opening up with the things that you said. And I know I can tell that you're an open book. Like the Swift Current crash. And again, for instance, one of the texts has come in here from Laverne and Swift. He goes, since the accident, Swift Current resident Bill Lee took it upon himself to help the city remember the four players. Shout out to Billy Lee. I'm sure Bob would agree with me. I didn't even get out of my mouth and you're nodding your head. So there's the shout out for
Yeah,
Bill Lee. Yeah, go ahead.
and Billy was such a pillar in the community back then when we were going through things. He was I remember so many times going to the greenhouse, having coffee and just talking about things. He was such a valuable member of us being able to continue to move forward. And what he did with that monument, if you haven't seen it, please stop by when you're traveling the Highway 1 there. It really is an awesome tribute to the boys, and Billy did a great job.
Philadelphia, Detroit, Swift Current alum Bob Wilkie joining us. And part of, in that call, like I mentioned, you survived the bus crash. So you're a man who's been through the fire, and not just that. You talked about accepting that job in Alaska coaching, being fired from that job, and then having to humble yourself and walk back through those doors and play for the team. Like that's, I often say we've all been through stuff, but there are levels of stuff. You've been through a lot, man. And I guess with your company, I Got Mind, instead of getting bitter about it, you're helping others. And that's what impresses me the most. So the floor is yours on that.
There came a point, Rod, where what I was doing wasn't working. And, I found myself in all these different places, like you read out my resume. And it would be great for a little while, but then eventually I showed up. And what I started to realize was it wasn't necessarily that they were unfair, or mistreating or anything. It was ultimately my behavior that caused them to make those decisions. And it was a hard day. And going through that process of really recognizing why I had developed all these patterns led back to even before the Swift Current accident. It's a difficult road to travel when you decide that you want to be a professional athlete. There's so much that goes into it that people don't understand, that causes a bunch of issues. And not communicating, telling everybody I was fine, putting on a different face was a pattern I started to develop at an early age. And then after the accident in Swift Current, the mask was hard to take off. It was something that was just permanently there. And that made life really difficult for a long, long time.
I'm trying to remember, because I work in the industry of recovery. Did you say you had a rock bottom, or did you say you had multiple rock bottoms? I feel like you said you had multiple rock bottoms.
Yeah, I've had multiple, unfortunately. You think you kind of get it all together and moving in a direction, and then the old patterns start to take over because you're really treading in uncharted territory. I didn't know how to navigate it. And being a male, coming from a male-dominated, very macho sport, just never developed those abilities to trust people enough to raise my hand and say, okay, I'm really struggling. I'm in a bad spot. Because what I had been shown was when you did that, people kind of pushed you away or moved you on to somebody else's problem. So it was really hard. And finding myself in those bottoms again, it's like, what the hell is going on, and why can't I figure this out? And it wasn't until I really started looking at the right people. I think that was the difference for me, is going to people outside of my network that had a lot more capabilities of really giving me the information I needed to move forward.
So where were you and when you made that realization?
26 years old, heavily contemplating taking my life, tired of pretending, and new husband at that point, and the last thing I wanted to do was ruin the thing that was saving me and making me feel good. And I knew that I needed to start doing things differently. So, picking up a different book, reading The Scientific Mind instead of Sports Illustrated, becoming very curious about how I was going to find a new way to live, I think really was the starting point for me, is that I didn't want to lose what I finally had in my life, and that was that love and companionship. And I knew that I needed to be better, and that started my journey.
NHL, WHL, and a few other leagues alum Bob Wilkie is with us. So we'll get back to on ice stuff in a second. Because I'm fascinated by this stuff. I'd rather talk about this. It's just not as glitzy as you know, the lights of the pro sports. But you said that, you were just on your way up to talk to a junior team the last time we talked. I won't say which one, in the AJ. What's it like when you're in that room with the young men? Because I do it here in Florida with the kids, and these kids get banged on now for being soft and this, but you can tell who's listening, can't you? Right? What's the reaction you get when you go in there and tell them your story and that you can help?
It's awesome. One of the most rewarding things that I've ever found in my life is to be able to sit in a room of these young men who have these big dreams and goals, and really explain to them how they work and why they're challenged in these different areas. And most importantly, provide different ideas of how they can get past that, and then see them do it, Rod. That's the most fulfilling part, is that I've earned the credibility for them to respect me enough to listen, and then learning how to present the ideas in a way that opens their minds where they actually want to do it. And it's not an easy thing to do, especially in the world today for these young people. There's so many different opinions and so many different people talking to them. It can be quite confusing. So it really is rewarding to know that all of the struggles that I've had in my life can be used to help them change the direction that they're headed.
Bob Wilkie's company, by the way, is I got mine, and we'll come back on that in a second. I don't. You see me smiling as you're talking because you say you do have the credibility. You've got the NHL beside your name. Sometimes when I get asked to go in and speak, I'm like, I'm just a broadcaster, and they're like, they don't care. Just get in there and talk to them. And they don't care. They don't care because they can somehow just tell that you've been through the fire. And the one thing is, Bob, you'll get this. All those junior hockey players, when you tell them what percentage get to the NHL, which is, it's like, I think at one time it was 3%. Now it's like 1%. When you consider 100% think they're going, that's a hell of an eye opener for them. It's like, you might want to think about, I'm not saying you're not going, but what if you don't? Because they've never stopped to think about that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of them, they're not fully understanding the scope of work that's required either. I know for me, I didn't fully understand, when they say, well, you're going to have to make sacrifices. It's like, I didn't think I'd have to make that kind of sacrifice. So, my parents didn't know. There wasn't a lot of people in our circle that could really help. So it was a real struggle. And, the reason that there's only 1% is that there's only so many jobs. And if you don't have the right skills, if you don't have the right mindset, if you don't know how to deal with adversity, if you don't know when you've been traumatized and that's what you're going through, then it's going to be that much more difficult to stay on that road, because there's everything out there testing to see if you're worthy of the success that you desire.
Well, and I get it. I got your hockey DB right up in front of me. You're sitting there going, I was a point a game. I had 85 points, and the year we won the Memmer. What do you mean I got to work? What do you mean I got to go to the gym? But you found that out pretty fast, didn't you?
It was my downfall. Being in junior hockey and kind of being one of those go-to guys and playing all that I wanted, trying to make that next step. I had never not made a team, Rod. That was a big blow to me at that point, because every time in my life I had been successful making the team that I wanted. So it was a real struggle. The hockey was the best hockey. It was the easiest hockey I ever played, playing in the NHL, because everybody was so good. But to stay there, I just was not prepared for the extra work. I thought when I got there, I could just kind of settle in and enjoy life. And I wasn't prepared that I was going to have to work that much harder to get there.
Right. Well, my dad scouted in the NHL for 26 years with Dallas. He always said the work begins the day you get drafted. That's not when you put your feet up. Right. And if you don't figure that out, you will figure it out. You don't have a choice. And by the way, with the 89 thing, we all love the team. Tizzy left, scoring the winner. That was one of the greatest stories in Canadian sports. But that was just as a team. For the individuals, do you have a message today, Bob, for the viewers? We got a big imprint across the continent of anybody that suffered trauma in their life and how they can Not get over it, but deal with it, however you want to say it.
Yeah, I think the tendency I see is that we downplay things. It's not that big a deal, and it really was an eye opener just learning about trauma and what it does to us mentally in our brains, how it does change our behavior, and you don't have to go through a traumatic event to become educated, and I think that's what we try and really reinforce with the young athletes and people. The more that we know about ourselves, the easier it is to navigate the life that we're trying to create. And ignorance is not bliss. The more that you can learn about who you are and what can potentially derail you, allows you that confidence in those times of crisis, because it's going to happen. In order to have it all, you got to risk it all. And when you're willing to take those risks, there's some things that can happen. And if you understand some things that can happen and how you're going to deal with it, that's how you're going to be successful in getting where you want to go.
Well, we have all these sayings in this recovery business, but they're sayings for a reason. Like, knowledge is power. That's not just recovery, but it's hard to learn. You can't learn to swim when you're drowning. That's all the things that you're saying here, right? Like, arm yourself. It gives yourself a chance. And maybe, because I don't know if we'll have time to come back to it, so I'm going to ask you now. Well, Troy is watching. He is in the tractor near Swift Current. Must be moving snow. He writes and he says, man, Bob Wilkie is a legend. Along with Kruger and Lambert, was best D-core in Broncos history. Stein, Troy in the trade. It was. Well, there's no two ways about that. But I Got Mind. You're not just dealing with athletes, but tell folks about your company, I Got Mind.
Yeah, it started in 2008 when I was coaching some young men in Pennsylvania. And I started to see, because I was going through my healing process, I was starting to see some of the same things happen with them. And I thought, boy, I really need to teach them some of these life lessons. And so we started going into the classroom instead of, the locker room. And we started talking about some of the things that they were challenged with in their life. And it really started to make a difference. And we were having huge success as a team. These players were able to move on. And I knew that I was on to something. And I also knew that as an entrepreneur, Pennsylvania is not the best place for an old hockey player. I needed to get back home. And so when I came back to Canada, the doors really opened to all of the possibilities. And before I knew it, there was parents sitting in the sessions, and they were teachers or business owners. And they started to say, hey, can you come and help our organization? Because the principles and the foundations are the same across the board. A lot of times it's just things we don't develop in our lives. And so been able to work with businesses and schools and teachers and sports programs, just providing the education and insight to who they are, how they operate, and how they can operate optimally.
Look them up on social media, everybody. I Got Mind. I would say that's the best place to go. And by the way, it's going to bother me all night if I don't correct myself. I said Lambert. I know it's Lambert. Everybody knows that I know. Okay, Bob, keep in touch. I appreciate you having the courage to come on and share your story and keep up the great work.
Thanks, Rod. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
All right. What do we got left here, Producer Corey? Okay. We're going to roll. A quick Stanley Cup final. Oh, he's gone. You gone. That's all good.
Nope.
Who's going to be in
I'm here.
Not for long. I think we're going to have to exit. Quick Stanley Cup pick. Do you have them?
Colorado looks good. I think with the history, the experience, I think Joe's got another winner on his hand there.
Joe, sudden death, Sakic. Very perfect ending. He's picking Colorado. Doesn't matter against who. We'll be right back. Game Plus TV and Silver State Sports Entertainment Network.